Ladies and gentlemen, with great pleasure I accepted the invitation to speak at this prominent Congress. As you noted before, and as you can see, and as it was mentioned in the kindly introduction, I am Roman Catholic priest and a religious, and this will become clear in my following thoughts. Please accept this predisposition. By the way, yesterday, because of the changing of timetable of this Congress, I had yesterday the possibility to celebrate Holy Mass for this Sunday, but it was the birthday of, the 80th birthday of the Pope. He celebrated his 80th birthday, but in fact he did not celebrate, but he did business as usual. I hope he will celebrate Sunday today. I want to thank him for his humble service to the Church and to the world, and for his great encyclics, which he give answer to many problems of the global world. Actually, it seems that, for example, the very good or relatively good results of the climate conference in Paris were partly, but very deeply influenced and originated by the encyclic Laudato Si. So I want to say happy birthday to Pope Francis, and may God bless you. My speech has two parts. The first part is cult and culture. You have the theme here of cultural diplomacy, and the second part will then more speak about diplomacy, especially of the Roman Catholic Church. There is a causal relation between cult and culture, and even though there might be a difference in terminology between German and English, where one would perhaps rather talk about worship and civilization, but I think we can use the words also in cult and culture. I believe the connection goes beyond mere similarities of sound. I believe every culture is a product of a certain cult. Both are interdependent and belong together. A culture forgetting the roots of his cult, of his religion, would be jeopardized of becoming irrelevant. And on the other side, when a cult cannot find its artistic cultural forms of expression, it stays abstract, superficial, and loses its spirituality. We can realize the connection in the earliest primeval cave paintings and the mysterious landmarks of cult and culture in Stonehenge. At this point of my presentation, I have to skip the great cultures outside of Europe for time's sake. I would need at least another presentation for that. I can recognize very clearly the principles of how cult and culture are intertwined regarding the historic evolution that led from Mesopotamia via Egypt, Palestine, Greece, and Rome to the so-called Christian Europe. Again, it would go beyond the scope of this presentation if I were to talk about the important role of Islam here. Last year, Navid Kermani, a Muslim born in Germany, published a book with the title Ungläubiges Staunen über das Christentum, roughly translatable, not yet translated though, to incredulous amazement of Christianity. A non-Christian is fascinated by the Christian culture without abandoning his own faith. He refers, for example, to Titus Burckhardt when he writes, quote, "If I understand Burckhardt correctly, holy art expresses a spiritual order of the world, while art that is merely religious in a general sense expresses subjective feelings, impressions, visions, or ideas. Or more to the point, religious art captures the view of man, holy art, the plan of God. In this sense, holy art is always parable of creation itself. I am grateful to Kermani for his incredulous amazement. But also Albert Einstein, which you cited before, quoted before, made some insightful remarks about the topic when he writes in his text about peace, über den Frieden, the following, quote, "It is a necessary precondition of our civilization to preserve and develop our inner culture. But this is nourished by two sources. The first is coming from the Hellenic spirit and was renewed and supplemented in the Italian Renaissance, especially Tuscany. It approaches the individual with the demand, think, observe, shape. The second source is Judaism and early Christianity. It is characterized by the principle, save your soul by selflessly giving serving the human society. In this way, we can talk about a shaping and a moral source of life of our culture." End of quotation, Albert Einstein. In other words, Jerusalem and Athens are two cities out of which Europe developed. I know that we here on an international and also intercontinental meeting, but my example is Europe. I speak from our point of view. I have to skip the exciting process of inculturation of the first millennium, in which precisely this symbiotic relationship of Greek philosophy, Roman law, and Judeo-Christian religion develops and incorporates new peoples and come directly to the high Middle Ages and my monastery in Heiligenkreuz, Holy Cross Abbey in the Vienna woods. Founded in 1133 and exists without any interruption. On this place, one can observe a special combination of Romanesque and Gothic style architecture. Both types of architecture are cultural phenomena, but they originated out of a highly religious motivation. The great Cistercian Saint Bernard of Clairvaux presented with his view of the Holy Scripture a reductionist conception of art that, according to many historians of art, was instrumental in the emergence of the Gothic style. Maybe there is a parallel evolution in reductionist arts in Islam, in Cordoba, at the same time of Saint Bernard. At the end of this Gothic era, I see the altar of Isenheim by Matthias Grünewald at the highest artistic level, and the redeeming death of Christ on the cross and his resurrection becomes visible. A synergy of similar greatness can be found in the High Mass in B minor by Johann Sebastian Bach. There would be an immense abundance of religious works, of art and buildings that put me in a credulous amazement, to make the other point to Navid Kermani. In the development of modern era, cult and culture are growing more and more distant to each other. Nevertheless, Christianity became the world's dominant religion on the way to a globalized world, while some aspects of colonialism and missionary activities are to be criticized. On different paths, we can see a process of inculturation on all continents. A special example of this context is the mission by the Jesuits in Paraguay. Maybe you saw the famous movie with, exactly. And all of Latin America that tried to realize the utopia of a theocracy and was tragically suppressed by allegedly enlightened forces. I come to the second part of my speech, the diplomacy of the Roman Catholic Church. I'm very happy to have here the Foreign Minister of Chile and former ambassador of Chile to the Holy See. Maybe you can see. Currently. Actually. Oh, Well, you can speak more detailed about that, what I say now. I'm sure you will call it, you will mention it better. The evolution I described in the first part had led to our current one village world. All the papal documents are in support of this state of affairs, provided that the principles of Catholic social teaching, subsidiarity and solidarity, are fully realized globally. For sure, the Catholic Church is the oldest and by far biggest global player, which wouldn't be possible without the culture supported by this cult. This phrase, this sentence, is the central phrase of my speech. For sure, the Catholic Church is the oldest and far biggest global player, which wouldn't be possible without the culture supported on this cult. Navid Kermani comes to my assistant again when he writes, quote, "If there is one thing I admire about Christianity, or maybe I should say about those Christians whose faith more than convinced me, conquered me, robbed me, all of my objections, if I should take just one feature, one attribute as a model, as a guide for myself, it would not be the beloved art, not the civilization with all its music and architecture, not its this or that rite as rich they may be. It is the specifically Christian love inasmuch as it doesn't refer solely to my neighbor. In other religions, there is also love and a call to mercy and forbearance and charity, but the love I experience in many Christians, most often those giving their whole life to Jesus, the monks and nuns, goes beyond the measure of love men could achieve without God. Their love makes no difference." End of quote. A Muslim write that. I'm a Christian, I'm very happy to hear that. This challenge, especially for Catholic Church as a global player, to make love come true. Paradoxically, as a subject of international law, the Holy See, it can use, among other instruments, diplomacy to achieve this goal. One has to take in account that in the common perception, diplomacy, maybe that's only a German language problem, doesn't always correspond with truth. Sometimes diplomacy has not to say everything to have a good result. Yet the Church depends on truth, even in its diplomatic actions. Apart from that, the Catholic Church, out of experience, had good reasons to suspect its initiatives can be more effectively implemented if they are carried out in secret, or at least with the utmost discretion. On the other hand, this means that her endeavors are barely perceived in our current media landscape. The Vatican has diplomatic relation with almost all the states, especially Chile and Austria. The Holy See sends nuncios, the Vatican equivalent to ambassadors, and the respective states send ambassadors to be accredited at the Holy Father. The Vatican is also represented in the European Union, the United Nations, and the most important international organizations. I think it would be a good idea to include in your conference in the future maybe a nuncio or a representative of the diplomatic activities of the Holy See. Papal diplomacy is surely among the oldest of the world. Pope Gregory the Great, my patron of name Gregory, 540 to 604, for example, used to be papal delegate for quite a while at the imperial court of Byzantium before he became pope. At the time, this position was known as apocrisiarius, a Greek word for ambassador or nuncio. After the circumnavigation of the world, a conflict between the two great colonial powers of that time, Spain and Portugal, was almost inevitable. It was thanks to a diplomatic initiative of Pope Alexander VI, otherwise among the more shady characters of church history, outside of this speech here, that this confrontation ended peacefully with the Treaty of Tordesillas. This treaty separated political influence on the globe like a knife through an orange. Peace was secured. Brazil speaks thus Portuguese to this day. Chile and the other countries on the western part of America speaks Spanish. There are and have been countless initiatives of papal diplomacy to bring and keep peace through the spirit of the aforementioned love that makes no difference. Unfortunately, not all of them are successful when political resistance is overwhelming. But success is not a Christian category. The calls for peace by Saint Pope Pius X at the beginning of World War I and by Benedict XV during World War I remained unheard. Also, the cooperation of the blessed Emperor Charles I of Austria to this end proved futile. When Pope Pius XI in the 30s realized the aggressiveness and inherent threat of peace of German National Socialism, he instructed his expert for Germany, Eugenio Pacelli, former nuncio in Berlin, to write the encyclic Mit brennender Sorge, with burning concern, in 1937. A document of almost prophetic qualities. When Pacelli became Pope, he had the hopeless task of searching for peace. His endeavors failed. There was even the risk that he would be kidnapped by the Nazis, like his predecessor Pius VI was by Napoleon. When in 1958 Angelo Roncalli was elected as successor of Pius XII, he chose the name John XXIII. As papal diplomat in the difficult times of the 30s and 40s of the last century, he was stationed in Bulgaria, Turkey, and Greece. Soon after he took over as Pope, representatives of Jewish organizations came to him to thank him for his achievements, saving the lives of many Jews in the countries he was responsible for at that ugly time. He accepted their gratitude gladly, but he pointed out that, in fact, his predecessor, Pius XII, was the one who be thanked. When he, Pius XII, learned of the systematic persecution of Jews by the Nazis, he ordered all nuncios, from Helsinki in the north to Cairo in the south, to organize transports to save Jews, to allow fake baptisms, and to collect money. The Jewish scientist Pinchas Lapide calculated that more than 800,000 Jews were saved from annihilation by these actions. Of the many peace initiatives, I can only point out the most recent. I have to mention, in the presence of the representative of Chile here, Cardinal Zamoré, when he did his work in keeping peace between Chile and Argentine by the Beagle Channel conflict at that time. But actually, the astonishing rapprochement of Cuba and the United States of America, which would not have been possible without the service of Cardinal Ortega of Havana on a mission by Pope Francis. The visits by the predecessors, John Paul II and Benedict XVI, served as preparation of these initiatives. The nuncios in Colombia and Venezuela worked tireless by appointment of the Pope to end the respective critical situation in these both countries. it is very unusual to create an acting nuncio as cardinal. But that's exactly what happened to Monsignore Mario Zenari in Syria at the recent consistory in November. Obviously, this was done to give more weight to his position amidst the catastrophic situation in Syria in order to work for peace in the spirit of Christian love. In this way, the Christian cult is the basis of Christian culture. And on this basis, the Roman Catholic Church tries to bring and keep peace out of love. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Your Eminence. Would you be prepared to take one or two questions? Okay, so we want to benefit from your presence here for comments and questions if there are. Yes, Anne.
Your Eminence.
Well, I'm not eminence. I'm not cardinal. Lord Abbot. Lord Abbot is very, very polite. Lord Abbot.
Well, if Europe is doing so badly, what can the Christian Catholic Church do to improve all what has disappeared? We are now at a stage where in Luxembourg, my home country, Belgium, religion is disappearing from public schools. And this with the agreement of our Archbishop. So we are giving up what was the fundamental of our culture. And young people will no longer understand what mean the beautiful pictures. What does mean the announced Fête à Marie in a picture? Or the music by Bach. What is the Catholic Church doing in this respect? I have the impression that the hierarchy of the bishops is so strong that even the Catholic people, the believers, are no longer taken in account. There is some kind of governance from the top. And, well, the question of women is in the Catholic Church still very sensitive. And we could not get an agreement with the Anglicans because of so many basics. Is there a will to attack those basics? Christ had women with him, and they disappeared in translation. Thank you.
I remember the day before yesterday, also a lady here on the podium explained the difficult situation in Belgium, that the Muslims, they by 70% go to their religious instructions at school, and the Roman Catholics are not accepted this. I think that's another example for the crisis of Europe. It's not the crisis of the church, because the church in general, in whole the world, global, has no crisis. Not in vocations, not in numbers. It's a deep crisis of our old continent, Europe, which is also coming in the demographic situation of our countries. Both regions, separated before by the Iron Curtain, have the same very deep inner problem, and the church in Europe is inflicted by that problem of the continent, but it's not the problem of the church. I agree that the question of the sacrament of ordination is a question, but I think that ordination is not a human right. I insist that religious freedom is a human right. Ordination is not a human right. And on the other hand, before I became abbot, I was 5 years president of the Pontifical Mission Societies. I know no other organization around the world which is defending so very much the rights and education and situation of the women all over the world, in Africa, in Asia. There we are really the progressive force in favor of the women. And don't speak about ordination as a human right. It's a very small part of the
marriage of the priest.
Well, it's also a human right to decide for celibacy. Nobody has obliged me to be celibacy. I decided by my own.
We will still call you Eminence because you deserve to be promoted Cardinal very soon. We hope.
Thank you very much.
And Herr Kanzler.
Gregor, you understand that I'm not saying eminence. Our old friendship. I think you covered rightly the second part of the title of your speech, diplomatic activities of the Roman Catholic Church, and it's coming out of an advantage of the Catholic Church being also a subject of international law and international relations. These are the possibilities which are used sometimes by popes, but there are also some discussion where there was not done enough also. But this is for sure another subject. But my impression is that the development is going in the direction that by civil society, the possibilities are really increasing. That cannot be under the command of the Pope or the bishops and so on and so on. It's coming out of convictions. And it is for sure happening, if I may say, the country we both are closer. I think the civil society, mainly done by Caritas or Diaconie by the Protestants, did a lot concerning the refugees. Even more importantly, they were pushing the politicians in this direction. Not always successfully, but I think what was happening was thanks here to Christians being engaged in this direction. So for the question is, are you convinced that it is a general development? So far, I think beside diplomatic activities, it might be that the civil society is more successful in this direction because we have all the difficulties with institutions. The second part is following the question before. I think we have on the one side a very strong development, may I say, of going down of the importance of religion. It is a consequence of some kind of enlightenment happening and so on, secularization, you can name it. But within the churches, here I may say, out of this are coming also some developments of, if I'm saying radicalism, the word does not really fit to this, to more aggressive standpoints. I'm looking to the evangelicals here, and so on, which is not guaranteeing that it is a real peace development. I think here, the Christian churches have to be more careful. It's also partly happening in the Catholic Church, but not in such a way like the evangelicals. So far, sometimes I'm confronted with the idea we need new crusaders.
New what?
Crusaders.
Crusader. No.
Yeah, for sure, I share your opinion. But for sure, it's also sad, and maybe it's also coming out of a reactivity towards the Islam. Maybe that's connected in a historical way, which is for sure bad. I would be interested, what can we do to have the diplomatic activities on the one side, and maybe the activities of the civil society on the side in a balance and being connected.
Thank you very much for this very good support of my speech. The Catholic Church is supporting these tendencies of civil society, but I think he can join them and they can join us in this, and the handling of the problem last year, above all, with the refugees shows a good cooperation. And really, civil society, non-government organizations, and the church, which is not a non-government organization, they joined together in push the policy a little bit to the right way. I have to, the lady Pope Francis, I think, is one of the best examples how Catholic Church tried to become in good contact with the normal people. All his form of expression is to look for better contact. Well, Crusades. I am chaplain of the Order of Malta, of the Cavalry Order, which was also part of the Crusades. I mentioned we had difficult problems, and I think the Crusades is one very bad problem in the history of Church. Pope John Paul II mentioned all this in his great Confiteor at the Friday in Lent time in 2002 to confess all what happened bad in the Church. But I have to mention one thing. I think 2 years ago, we realized, firstly, the very difficult situation with IS, Islamic State in the Near Orient. And it's clear that we have nothing to do like a crusade, but the situation in 1085 before the first crusade with the Seljuks has a very great similarity to the situation of IS 2 years ago. And it is in that atmosphere wrong, but it's clear what's the origin of that the first crusade come to that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good morning, Reverend. Thank you for a most interesting presentation today. Thank you also for referring to my country, Bulgaria, and Papa Roncalli, who is, believe me, to this very day, deeply respected, admired, referred to in my country, because his role was related to one of the brightest pages in my nation's history, the rescue of almost 50,000 Jews, the entire Jewish population in 1943, from deportation to the camps. So that's a very, very special name and a very special part of Bulgaria's history. It has to do with moral choices, how we make moral choices, and I would use this opportunity to make the connection between cultural diplomacy and the moral choices we make. We cannot always make them in politics, but we can definitely make them in an endeavor related to cultural diplomacy. However, I'll take you to another question which is pertinent, I believe, to the overall situation of today, although doesn't make front pages now. And this is the relationship between the Catholic Church and the Orthodox Church. It's a very unfortunate history, again, that we have over the ages. The problem is, and to be perfectly self-critical, not personally, but on the part of my kind of religion, East Orthodoxy, I think that most blockage has come from the Orthodox Church, because lately, and especially with even John Paul II, but also very much so Pope Francis, also all of them made kind of overtures desiring to engage in conversations and interaction with the Orthodox Church. I think that in order for Christianity to be a good interlocutor and partner in engaging other religions, the first thing to do is just make these two religions, they're not even two, these two kind of types of Christianity be together again as they used to be 1,000+ years ago. So what's your take of this? I'm sorry to say, I'm almost frustrated to say that my church, the Bulgarian Orthodox Church, was one of the 4 churches that boycotted the Constantinople Grand Sabor, and that was all under the pressure of the Russian Orthodox Church. So basically you have to deal with the Russian Orthodox Church in order to have the others, like my national church, kind of follow. What's your take on that? Again, in order to engage with other religions, we definitely need to make sure that this schism is dealt with. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Firstly, to insist in Angelo Roncalli, in your country, in Turkey and Greece. My point of view at that was to say Roncalli very good, but he itself said it's not only Roncalli, but the front of Helsinki to Cairo by the nuncios, and maybe 800,000 Jews in total have been saved by that initiative of Pius XII, which was hardly criticized by Hochhuth, the German author, and I think that was not real and not true what Hochhuth did. To the second point, the Second Vatican Council, 30 years ago, 40 years ago now, made a special document of ecumene, of the good contact between the churches in East and West and Orthodox and Catholic and the Protestant churches. Our problem is the diversity of the churches. You mentioned it a little bit. If we speak with the, I don't know exactly what is the title of the ecumenical patriarch in Constantinople. He is the first under equal in the churches. Primus inter pares, but there is also a special title he had as ecumenical patriarch. If the Pope is speaking with Bartholomeus in Constantinople, the patriarch in Moscow is not happy about that. If the Pope speaks with the patriarch of Moscow in Havana to find a neutral place, the own Holy Synod is against his patriarch. And we know that the autokephaly, that's the construction in the Greek word of that every church has this autonomy, makes for the Roman Catholic Church very difficult to continue in her ecumenical activities ordered by the Second Vatican Council. And on the other side, you see that with the Protestant churches, we have the same problem. They invited the Pope to Lund a few months ago, but in next year in Wittenberg and in the places of Martin Luther, the German Protestant churches was not able to find a common way to invite the Pope or not. Anyhow, the Church, the Roman Catholic Church, will not end, and also their success is not a category of Christianity. The Roman Catholic Church will not end in insist of ecumene, of better contacts with the maybe large target of unity, but I think it's something done. We are not shooting against each other. We had this in the history with Protestant and maybe also sometimes in the eastern part of Europe, and I think that is one success, a partly success, but one success, and we will continue.
Thank you very much. If you have time, we are going to take one last question, and then we will let you go. There are two ladies. I was always in favor of the gender equality. Yeah, you.
Your Eminence.
Not eminent.
My Lord Abbot.
Thank you.
As a Catholic and having been involved in so many activities in the Catholic faith, both in Nigeria and having lived abroad, we've done so many things in terms of justice and peace, carry trials. We've just ended the year of divine mercy. And my Reverend Father in my parish in London had made us gone a step further, that we always have this relationship with the Islamic school and the mosque very close to our parish, and we do a lot of things together. We visit them when they have activities. They come to us when we have activities. And I took that model to Chad and visited IDP camps and went to the cathedral in N'Djamena and got the people in the church, especially the Anglophone community, and we were able to do a lot of donations to this IDP. That's outside, but it's all part of humanitarian, what the Catholic Church fights for, being your brother's keeper. And I'm saying the Catholic Church is doing a lot. People might not feel it, but like you rightly said, in education, in health, and what have you. But I just want to buttress what you've said, that a lot is being done, even in the IDP camps, that people feel there's nothing, there's no hope for them, but a lot is being done for them. Thank you, Your Eminence.
I have to confess I didn't understand very clearly what's your question.
It's not a question, I was just trying to add on to what
Yes,
you said,
yes,
what
yes.
the Catholic Church has been doing.
Yes, yes. Well, speeches, contacts, conferences, invitations, visits in one direction and the other. But I will tell you one interesting thing. I was a few months ago in Salzburg on a conference of the ECO, Institute of Christian Orient, and there was reported by the dignitaries of Palestine that there is a ecumeny by persecution. The different churches, you know, there is one problem is the calendar. It's superficial, but it's from the history. We have another calendar, and the date of Easter and Christmas are on different places. And then the bishops of the Holy Land and of Syria explained us that they agreed without great publicity to celebrate Christmas at the Catholic date and to celebrate Easter at the Orthodox date together, to make it visible that under the suppression, the ecumeny is easier than under the normal, comfortable, permissive situation. Only to explain that.
We decided to give the last word to South Africa. It is very close to our heart.
Thank you for that very insightful speech, and do thank Pope Francis for all of us for the work he is doing. For the work he's doing, thank you, in representing Christianity well as a spiritual path that is fueled by love. But here's the question. How do we ensure, though, that in the entire world, religion is a healing force and promotes peaceful coexistence in multicultural societies instead of being a potent force for the opposite? I was raised as a Seventh-day Adventist. I was raised to believe that everyone else is crazy, including Catholics. But today, I'm part of the charismatic churches. My church embraces other religions, but most charismatic churches believe Muslims are lost. And that fuels divisions in multicultural societies. How do we turn that around? Thank you.
I think the most important thing in all that is to make Europe not so strong in the Catholic Church. And the election of Pope Francis is a very good example to put new weight on the different continents. I'm very happy to have a Pope now from Latin America. Maybe the next Pope come from Africa. I hope so. To make visible that the Church is not only Europe, but one instrument for peace. I can no guarantee for the good success of all the paths of peace and the diplomatic activities, but I can guarantee that they will never end.
Very much. Please join us. Thank you.